So the big question is this: how are those in the self-storage industry like us going to be successful in today's market? That's the question, and this show will give you the answers. My name is Jim Ross, and welcome to the Self-Storage Show.
Hi everyone, this is Jim Ross from the Self-Storage Show. I got an episode coming with you with an interview. Haven't done the interviews for a little while, kind of out of practice, so good, we're bringing it back. Got Kevin Bledsoe with me today. How's it going, Kevin?
Good, how are you, Jim?
Good, thanks for taking the time. I know you're probably crazy busy, so thanks for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely, I appreciate you having me.
Yeah.
A couple things going on.
No, yeah, it's always fun. Go ahead, let's just start off with kind of give us a little synopsis of who you are, how you got into storage, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, my name's Kevin Bledsoe, and I've been in the self-storage industry for 16 years. I spent the first decade on the operations side of the business, and I worked for a small REIT, had about 30 properties where I kind of got my feet wet and learned on day one how to run self-storage properties and rent trucks and install keypads and, and gate controllers and all that good stuff. And and then eventually, after I got through a little bit of a training period, became a district manager trainee. So I made it in life at that point. Spent a couple years with that company, and then worked for a larger company called Simply Self Storage out of Orlando, Florida, and ran about a 30 property portfolio for them. And then I moved on, did some third-party management stuff, and then actually helped start Storage Asset Management, which is actually the largest privately held third-party management company in the industry.
Yeah, I didn't realize
so,
nice.
Yeah, they're good guys, a good company. So we started with 18 contracts, and I think by the time I left, they were at 65, and I guess they got a lot more successful after I left. They're at about 300 now. So
let's make a correlation here. Okay, you left. I'm just kidding.
That's right. Yeah, so in 2015, I came in and joined investment real estate in brokerage. And so since 15 to now, I've been building a brokerage team in the Northeast Mid-Atlantic, and we specialize solely in the self-storage industry. And that's it. We value about 100 properties a year and sell between 20 to 30 self-storage facilities each year as well.
That's great. Well, you've been there, done that. You kind of ran the whole gamut when it comes to being a part of storage. That's awesome.
Yeah, we do a few things from time to time.
Yeah. Well, anyway, the reason I want to bring you on, I saw a post where you're talking about, you talk about how owners can bring value into the facility, and of course they want to sell it and make some more money, but they have to kind of build that value in the first place. And I was like, it's one thing having me talk about it, operations. I want to hear it from kind of the broker perspective, and then you have a case study, real numbers, of people putting this kind of stuff into effect. So kind of, yeah, the floor is yours. I'd love to kind of see what you got.
Yeah, sounds good. It's helpful because I spent so many years in operations. So working on the brokerage side, and I've built hundreds of budgets over that time period. So the nice part is that kind of walk the walk and talk the talk, so to speak. We have the opportunity to, when we list a property for sale, we can look at the owner, look across the table and say, hey, we've rented those storage units before, and we know what it costs to put liability insurance in place. We know what it costs to hire a property manager and to pay them. So, for us, it's really helpful just because we've rented so many storage units and built properties, and then we put that into play when we put together our marketing packages and our offering memorandums as well. So, I think some of the things that that we see when we're doing valuations for owners, and where owners typically and new investors to the industry are really missing the boat, is we get in there and we look at the financials, and we can pretty quickly just pick it apart. We're typically, what we see the revenue management is either non-existent or not consistent enough. So we would typically recommend to an owner that when a tenant moves into the property, that they're getting between a 6% to 10% rent increase on the high end, typically 10%, within the first 6 months that they move in. And then after that, every 9 to 10 months after that, they should get another rent increase after that as well. The national average length of stay is about 12 months for a renter
Yeah.
across the country. And we know if you can get that first bump in month 6, that you're going to get that, $100 unit, you're going to get a, say a 6% bump. That's another $6 you're going to get for an additional 6 months. And ultimately that rolls through to the bottom line, to your NOI.
Yep.
So consistent rent increases. A lot of times what we see is they put rent increases in place in, let's say, 2018. They got a little scared in 2019 because they thought everybody was going to move out.
Yeah.
We've done tons of testing on it, and we know from the testing that we've done with self-storage portfolios that less than 3% of tenants move out within 90 days.
Yeah. Yep.
Right? It's a pain in the rear end to move your stuff out. So I think that's number one. I think that's where you're going to get the most bang for your buck as a new operator or an investor in the industry. Is the revenue management piece of the puzzle is number one. That's what you have to. It's what you have to do.
Sure.
I think after that, I think it comes down to, there's some other pieces as well. Collecting late fees. We see a number of property owners who they simply don't collect. You go and look at their management software, and you're looking at, tenants that they'll have 30, 40 tenants over 60 days past due, but the property is 95% occupied or 100% occupied, and they're very proud of their 100% or 95% occupancy. You go, well, in reality, you're really only like 75 or 80% occupied, and you have a bunch of people here that aren't paying, and this is a for-profit business, and we would like you to make a profit. So
I had that exact conversation with somebody a week ago. The exact same scenario. So it happens all the time.
All the time, Jim. It's almost unbelievable.
Kind of scary. Huh?
It's really scary. And we have some really easy lien laws, right? I mean, they're pretty easy compared to apartment evictions or, kicking a tenant out of an apartment. That's a 6 to 9 month process to get them out of an apartment, out of your rental, your multifamily unit, right? Getting them out of self-storage is typically on the low end, maybe 60 days to maybe 90 days in most states is typically the process. So it's almost unbelievable because you have, they're like, oh, we're turning away tenants. I'm like, well, how about you sell the 30 people that haven't paid you for the last 12 months, So staying on top of collections, not waiving late fees. We used to talk a lot in the operations side of the business about, really limiting the managers, don't allow them to waive late fees. Or, we had a rule that it was 1 late fee per year for a customer.
Same way, exactly. Yep.
You get one get out of jail free card. The tenant appreciates it, and you tell them, hey, look, we're going to do this once a year for you. The next time we are charging you for it. So you have to train your tenants. You have to train them, let them know, if you're going to be late, we're not going to waive the late fee. As soon as you start waiving late fees, they want it done every time. And we typically see late fee income at a property account for anywhere for between like 3%, maybe 8 or 9% on the high side, but 3% to 8%. And that can add some additional revenue to the property when you're talking about a property generating $400,000 to $500,000 revenue a year. So that's a very important piece to operations. Additionally, tenant insurance. There are so many owners who say, we don't offer tenant insurance. We don't believe in it. We're just not going to do it. And I will say to them all the time, say, guys, look, you need to put tenant insurance in place. Just like if you went to rent an apartment, typically most landlords are going to expect you to have renter's insurance for your apartment, right? It's the same thing with self-storage. And, they say, well, nothing, hardly anything ever happens. And I'm like, guys, I had a building burned down in New Jersey, and it affected 50 storage units. And guess what? We weren't very good at implementing tenant insurance at that point in time. Nope. I think only like 4 units had tenant insurance.
I have a couple of videos on my back pocket that I show owners that puts the fear of God in them when they see that, because it's just the smoldering buildings, and like, it does happen. So.
Yeah, I mean, it was a pool supply. It was like pool chemicals in a storage unit, mixed, caught on, combusted, set the storage building on fire. Only like 4 tenant insurance policies. So we ended up with 46 customers. Well, all 50 were not happy, but I can tell you the 4 that had tenant insurance who got money back, they were much happier than the other 46. And the owner ended up in lawsuits with a number of the tenants for a number of years that they had to settle out of court on them. So tenant insurance is very important, and it also falls through to the bottom line. Typically you have a $9 or $10 premium for the renter, and then the owner of the property is receiving usually somewhere between $3 to maybe $5 or $6 on the high end on that type of policy, just depending on what company you work with. But tenant insurance can be a big piece. It can really help grow, the value of your facility. There's some other ancillary businesses, if you can get lucky enough to get a cell tower and get 4 or 5 renters on that cell tower, or colos as we would call them. Maybe a billboard. Trucks can be profitable, but you kind of have to staff it, and that sort of offsets some of the commissions many times. But I've seen some properties or trucks, be very profitable as well, and they've done very well. But I think those are probably some of the primary things. There's some things today that owners are doing. You're probably seeing this, Jim, as well, where they're doing premium pricing on storage units.
Yep.
Yeah. So, it used to be where it kind of started, I think, with the multi-story sites, where everything on the first floor by the doors was, a 10 by 10 would be $100, and then the ones further down the hallway was maybe $85 or $90, and then second story by the elevator entrances might be $95, and then you get to the middle of the building, it would go to $85 or $75.
Yeah.
And now we're seeing drive-up properties take on the same thing as well, right? They're charging more if you're by the gate at the front of the property and the light's right across the aisle from your unit. They're charging less if you're back by the retention pond in the corner. Maybe a safety cell. So that's a big piece as well.
Yeah, and a lot of these things, and you kind of hit on it at the very beginning, it's about being consistent. Being consistent, just doing it. I think, again, there's some auxiliary things you can plug in here, but what we just talked about, what you hit on, that covers 95% of the stuff. It really does, of getting the most bang for your buck when you implement it correctly. So yeah, let's jump into the little case study. I want to see some numbers of what you guys have done. Kind of just shows you the bottom line, the effect of putting some of these practices into place. There's real money. It's not just strategy and hyperbole we're talking about here. This is real tactics here. So yeah, let's check it out.
Yeah, you can see this okay, Jim?
Yep, we're good.
Okay, great. We'll start with a quick overview of the site. This is a property that we were selling here in Pennsylvania, and not a huge property in terms of the self-storage industry, but I just thought it was a great case study because it was something that really showed how much upside you can get out of some of these properties and how our buyers looked at them. So this site was about 28,000 square feet, and it had just shy of 30 parking spaces on the property. They were getting about $9.50 a square foot. And this is a little bit of a breakdown of the revenue. So today, where the property was at $145,000 of revenue. Now this site was very poorly operated. Owners were not engaged. They had a very poor looking office, which as part of the sale, they got approvals to build a brand new office in front of the property. That was part of my agreement with them, is you got to put the new office in. The job trailer left a lot to be desired. So, this was their revenue. This was their expenses. Their expenses only came to $76,000. And the funny part was you'd go to the job trailer and it had office hours between, I think it was like 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock, and they weren't open Saturday or Sunday. And they had no online rental programs.
Wow. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Probably had a gone fishing sign half the time on the door too. So yeah. I get the picture. Yep.
Yeah. So in reality, this property, the net operating income on this property was just shy of $70,000. So in like the typical brokerage world, we're going to put maybe a 7 cap on this property. It had some deferred maintenance on it, so maybe 7.5 or even 8 cap on this property, and that would put a valuation on the site at just shy of $1 million, Jim. So so how do you handle this? There's so much upside in it. The self-storage industry is so hot, and everyone's hearing that. People are paying crazy prices. So what we did is we came in and said, okay, look, the seller said to us, like, hey, Kevin, we can't sell at this price. We're going to try and turn this thing around ourselves. And I said, well, you haven't done it for the last 20 years. What makes me think that you're going to do it now, right? You're gonna get the magic pill, and all of a sudden you're going to be the greatest self-storage operators in the world.
Yep.
I just, just didn't see it happening. So I said, well, what if we can get you a little bit of a premium for the property? I think buyers are going to understand there's a lot of upside in this property. And we had plenty of buyers that came to us and they said, Kevin, this property is just significantly overpriced, because we took the revenue did a pro forma on it, and we took it up to 206,000, which was basically a 30% vacancy factor on it. But then we did go in and normalize the expenses, and we added some more expenses to it, and added some things in here, applied it to office expenses, so that you could put the website into your advertising and market, so you could have better management software, so that you could implement credit card processing, so you could do online rentals, all the things that you could use to help run the property either remotely or with some staff on site, and have an online presence where you can do online rental programs as well. So their NOI was $70,000. Our NOI was $120,000. So we did put a premium on the property, and this is how we valued it. We valued it at 1.7% cap rate. I mean, a 7% cap rate, which puts it at about $1.7 million. The
Okay.
property.
I was going to say 1.7 cap rate. Wow. Okay. That's crazy.
It is. It's pretty aggressive. So we ended up, this property ended up selling for $1.5 million, right? So pretty expensive for a property that with that sort of NOI on it. That really put the property trading, at quite a premium from where it was actually at today. It probably actually, I think in reality, it probably would have traded at right around like maybe a 4.5 or 5 cap. And a lot of buyers said to us, they said, Kevin, that's a really low cap rate. That's kind of crazy, but we just don't think that works. We said, well, okay, the property needs, $1.5 million. We think it needs about $200,000 capital improvements. So that puts you at 1.7 on how much you're all in on the property. But what happens is, we know that this is in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, which is a very hot market right now, and there's lots of construction going on. There's a lot of brand new houses and townhouses going in the market. And what we said is, okay, so we agree, the property may not be worth this value today. However, if you come in and do the $200,000 of capital improvements and make all these, get rid of all the delinquent units, take the unrentable units back to rentable status, and implement basic management practices, we think that the property, you could do a 4% increase in your street rates and tenant rates every year, and you could close the gap by running the property more efficiently and actually having real office hours and real technology to run the property. We took a look at all the properties around it. All the properties in the market were 90% or higher, with the exception of one property down the street that was 2 years old, that's like 40,000 square feet and was already up to 85% occupancy. So the demand in the market's very positive. It's a growing market. It needed some TLC. It needed some operational expertise. But if you take this property, just do simple revenue management, it wasn't anything really aggressive, and you can take the occupancy from today, which was really at about 40% or 60% financially occupied, and you can take it all the way up to 92%, which is essentially where the rest of the market's sitting at. And the rates in this market it's really an $11 to $12 market. And if you remember from my analysis, they were at $9.50, but only really 60% filled. So they had room to move rate. They had room to grow occupancy. And over time, as you increase rates, you increase the revenue. You actually charge for the late fees and actually collect it.
Novel concept. Yeah.
Novel concept, right? You actually sell retail supplies, sell locks and a few boxes to every tenant, and implement the tenant insurance and get the tenant insurance up to a 75 to 80% penetration rate of actual new renters. And then we just came in here and normalized the expenses and carried those out over a 5-year period of time.
Yeah.
So for us, we know someone is into this project for $1.7 million in year one. But we also know that this property is probably going to sell somewhere between $3.2 to $3.4 million in year 5. And that's simply by running it correctly, implementing basic operational practices, revenue management, tenant insurance, collecting late fees, and improving the overall appearance and condition of the property. So you can turn really on this an equity position of maybe 1.8 to 1.7 million dollars over a 5-year period of time.
See, yeah, when I talk to owners and that, we're talk about raising rates and running more efficiently, like we're just talking about. But when you slap on a cap rate on it and kind of showing just the value of what just a little bit of change here, just the big value you're going to get at the end of it, it's so much more impactful. It's some of the light bulbs start going off. Like, oh, okay, I start getting it. And so
Yeah.
I want to see just kind of that progression, seeing like real numbers. It all adds up. Like every single little factor we're talking about here, when you implement it and put it into practice, it adds up. And when you put a valuation on it, yeah, it's crazy how much you can change the valuation from these practices like we're talking about here.
Yeah, it really does, and that's why we do 100 valuations a year, Jim. It's because owners talk to us and we give them kind of the secret recipe, and they go, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that much I was losing that much value. So we do the valuation, we give them our thoughts. We don't do it for them.
Sure.
We say, hey, this is what you should do, and here's who you call if you need help with it. And they implement it, and 2, 3, 4 years later, they call us, and that valuation's, $500,000, $700,000, $1 million higher than the day that we talk to them. So we try and help them if we can, and sometimes it's just time for people to sell, and they just want to sell the property. So a lot of these properties we look at, there's between $700,000 to $1 million plus of equity that's being lost when we trade the properties for them.
Oh, huge! And we got a few more minutes here, but I got to ask this question, and I'm sure it might be maybe open to interpretation. It might be different on case by case basis, but like someone comes in and they know there's a lot of room on the money they're leaving on the table right now. They put these practices into place. Boom, they start, 60 days, they start seeing the effect of the additional revenue coming in. And then they want to sell. Okay, they'll have their mindset they want to sell eventually. When people are looking at it, do they want to see years of track record of the new rentals coming in, or is a 12-month kind of rolling time period good enough to have that evaluation? I'm just kind of curious on how long they have to have those new practices and these new revenue streams in place.
Yeah, so it's actually a great question. So let's put it this way: the juicier the deal, Jim, if someone can come in and they can show 3 months, 3 months is typically pretty light. But if the deal is really juicy and there's just all kinds of upside above and beyond that, someone's just trying to do a quick flip and they come in and then maybe they own it for 6 months and get 3 months of rent increases in place, and the occupancy remains the same or continues to climb. Sometimes you can sell it in 3 months. Really, I think buyers want to see at least 6 months of data. Yeah. And they don't want to typically see your best 6 months. They want to see if you're in the Northeast or Mid-Atlantic, they want, and you're in a snow belt region, they want to see not only what does it look like in May, June, July, and August, but they also want to see what it looks like in January, February, and March. So, but I think the rule of thumb is typically 6 months. We can annualize it. Anything less than 6 months, it's going to be met with a little bit of skepticism. So you can buy properties and do a flip within a year. I know there's a portfolio that we're actively selling right now that, it's 10 plus properties, and I think 6 of them have only been owned for less than 14 months. And he's going to get quite a premium on the portfolio when we trade it for him at some point here in the near future.
That's great. That's what because I've heard stories like that. That's why I wanted to bring that up, because I've heard some of those guys that they kind of come in, fix it up, flip it, and it's a really quick time period. So yeah, always interesting.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
Again, well, thanks for coming on, man. This has been enlightening and eye-opening. For those people that want to get more information, reach out to you and see how you can help them. Give us your contact info.
Yeah, they can reach me at 717. 808-1192, or they can also reach me by email, kbledsoe, BLEDSOE @irellc.com.
Cool. I'll put that in the show notes and all that, and make life easier for everybody. So
okay.
Cool. Well, thanks so much again for taking the time and being on, man.
Sounds good. Thanks a lot, Jim.
All right. Take care. Let's talk to you later.
You too. Thanks. Bye.
And done. Hi, everyone. This is Jim again. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to visit 3milestorage.com for more free resources on how to grow your self-storage business. See you on the next episode.